To the Sorare Data Strategy Review session. I am Andrew Laird, and joining me today is Sean Newsham, probably today and every Friday. This week we're talking about Gameweek 234, which the deadline was 4 hours ago. Sean, we were talking a little bit last night about how much of a mess this game week is going to be. It's now after the deadline. You feel the same way?
Yeah, it's terrible. I mean, this week's ridiculous. I also think the prize pools are going to be stupid this week, as in, like, they're really big and it's going to be like super top tier prizes because the stupid cooldown factor has had a chance to cool down because there's been no prizes recently. So, like, I think the top end of each division is going to be massive cards. Like, you're going to see like Haaland and Mbappe's out there, and there's like, I don't know, 25, 30 games, and half of them are going to have COVID implications. So I think it's going to be kind of absurd of a week to really go into things. But yeah, I mean, the decisions I think I made yesterday and I was having to like consider were far more difficult than what they've been for. I can't even remember the last time I had more difficulty setting lineups, just in terms of like what lineup to prioritize, what terrible options I have in this spot versus this spot. So it's a difficult week.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Did you find that the way that you decided to prioritize your lineups was any different than it has been?
It could have been so generally speaking, the way I go about my lineups are I here. Let me ask you this question: how do you prioritize the regions? And I'll tell you how I prioritize. Like, if you use all six regions, and like, what is your ranking system of like the regions?
Yeah, so it everything I enter is basically like how I want to win. And so like U23s are usually the first place that I go because like U23, like my U23 cards are probably more competitive than any other like region that I have. But I don't have a U23 this week. And so it was like, okay, so that's thrown out. And then I have basically been trying to do as much as I can in All Star, uh, Rare Pro, excuse me. And even that this week, I was just like, I don't know if this like makes a whole lot of sense. And to be honest, I've basically given up on Challenger. Not basically, like I have given up on Challenger. And I started to try to play Champion Europe, which we haven't talked about mostly because I didn't feel like you berating me for doing it. But now we're doing a whole show. And so now I'm not going to be able to avoid that. But I basically like have, at least at this point of the calendar, like I don't want to say like set it and forget it lineups, but like I don't have like a ton of depth in these regions and this time of year. So like I said, I don't have a U23 lineup this week because I have a bunch of K League and J League guys and Vandevort who are off, and I didn't, and not even like my better guys aren't playing. So I ended up basically trying to decide whether I wanted to play my what I considered my strongest lineup in either All Star Rare Pro or Challenger Rare Pro. And I was looking at the rewards like a lot more closely than I have been. And it just felt like there was a better chances for me to like literally win a star card in Challenger than it was in All Star. Because like we're in a couple of discords together and there's a lot of like lineup sharing in terms of like, this is what I'm going to play, how does it look? And the number of like lineups that I saw with like, oh, there's the Tony Cruz super rare and there's the Lewandowski, and I'm like, I'm not sure I want to compete against those guys. So I just went to Challenger because I have basically three guys from Sporting and two guys from Porto. And I'm like, I'm just going to go there and do my best and see what happens. And so that's where I ended up for basically like how I prioritized.
Yeah, normally I would go. So I normally prioritize in terms of just like what the best rewards would be. I was like, Champ Europe's greater than U23, which is greater than Global, which is greater than Challenger, which is way greater than MLS or Americas, which is way greater than Asia.
Asia, yeah.
Is probably how I'd rank it. But this week, yeah, looking at things, Challenger, there's like 8 games, and not all the teams are even. They're not even minted. So like you
Right.
have like 10 teams, 12 teams in Challenger, and the prize pool's huge. So
Huge.
I think that you have a really a chance of getting a card in Challenger. So I considered using my elite. So the thing is right now, this week is a really good week for me, U23 wise, from a perspective of like, I have elite level U23 players in this upcoming game week. And I debated using them in Challenger just to utilize them in Challenger. And honestly, I think if I went back, I might do it that way because I think that my lineup makes the most sense because the Porto game is expected to go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
However, we both know it could very easily just get kiboshed and not
Yeah.
play. And if I did my U23 elite players in division in the Challenger Europe division, it would have lumped all of my guys from Porto together instead of splitting them. So like in case that game got canceled, then I'm fine. And if that
Yeah.
game doesn't get canceled, they're likely going to just absolutely smash the opponent because they're huge favorites. So I went back and forth between doing U23 lineup and then doing a Challenger lineup for Rare Pro. And something you guys will hear from us is that we both realistically talking, like yesterday, I told Laird, like there's so many COVID related issues. There's so many issues with people being off on international duty. Then you have the international duty with, you have guys that you're not sure are going to start and whatnot. There's so much nonsense going on. I told Laird yesterday, I'm like, I'm just going to make sure my YouTube or my Rare Pros are as good as they can be. And then I don't really care about any of the other divisions because they just are useless realistically. But I do think this week is a good week to get good rewards and a lot of them. So I tried to do as best as I could with my lineups, but I just a lot of holes and a lot of question marks around there.
Yeah, for sure. Good morning, Andy, as I see, but thanks you guys for joining us on the stream here, Josh and Mike and Bob. Appreciate you guys checking in here. I was looking at, Josh brings up that Benfica have a bunch of COVID problems too. Like they're one of the teams that like, we're like, oh, they're okay, but they definitely might not be. So I was like basically running some numbers this morning on the lineups that were submitted. And because one of the things we were talking about last night, which you just brought up, was like, you were like, am I really going to play Diogo Costa in Challenger instead of U23? And it feels like a waste, like if you don't play him in U23. So like, I totally get it. And I think
I was going to, except for I looked further at the pool, and the bottom of the U23 star pool is like 1 ether card. Like if you get even the back end total last is like 1 ETH. If you get like bottom end of Challenger, you're looking at like 0.3, 0.4. Now, obviously, things are probably a bit different than they were the other day because obviously ETH is taking a bit of a bath right now, which would change that stuff a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a situation where I just decided to go with U23 because my team is really good there, and if I do end up on the top in like a podium spot, I expect to get at least like a 1.5 plus ETH card, which I don't know if I can expect that in Challenger as much. But my Challenger team would have been really good as well. The problem was I had one Challenger goalie. I looked because I have like a semi Porto offensive stack with Terme and Otavio.
Mm-hmm.
So I really wanted to play that because I also had like Sarabia, Pedro Gonzalez, Rare. I only had one Challenger goalie, and that was Diego Costa. Everyone else, I just didn't have another rare goalie. So I looked at all the pricing, and nobody really made total sense to me. But I thought, I even told you yesterday, I thought it was a pretty good spot to buy a goalie if you had interest in having a goalie like more longer term. I think it was a good spot to buy one because this game week is a really good game week to be able to have a lineup, especially if your lineup is a decent one.
Yeah, you brought that up. You were like, I never like recommend buying a goalie like for a game week, but if you were ever going to do it, it was this one. And
the last time I thought, so for me personally, I told actually our good DGen friend Scosmo last night bought the Laite, the Helton Laite card off of the market, and I think it was a good decision by him. I think it made a lot of sense. But the last time I bought a card to actually deal with a week was like 4 months ago. I bought a Dean Huiberts rare card, and I got second in whatever it was and got like a legit super rare out of it. So like it was well worth it, but I paid like 0.04 for it. But yeah, like I don't recommend buying cards for one individual game week because the prize pools are just generally not good enough.
Right.
But if you're going to buy a card, the like long term, for example, like I have an Albin Lafont. If I did not have an Albin Lafont, I think I probably would have bought one for this game week.
Well, right. Well, yeah. I mean, you obviously also kind of, I don't want to say hedged on it, but you were like, If you can buy a player for this game week that you will then use in the future, then it makes sense.
Yeah.
But if it's literally just for this game week, it doesn't.
Correct. And there was a lot of like Turkish goalies, but it's like I don't really want to pay 0.45 for
Yeah.
a Turkish goalie that is 33 years old. If there was like a 26-year-old starting goalie that was like 0.4 ETH that made sense, and I'm like, all right, I could get some usage out of him long term, I probably would have done it. But I looked and it was like, all right, this guy's like, or you have obviously all the top end guys in Champion Europe. Well, I'm not going to pay like 3 ETH for Courtois.
Right.
Even though I'd use them, like I'm not going to do that right now. So like I basically am looking at like the Challenger. Really, the lineups I wanted was Challenger because there's not much in Challenger. Like Mehdi Terame is an elite option in Challenger this week. So like being able to use them there would have been ideal, but I didn't make it work. And I honestly, to be fair, I didn't want to keep spending time trying to figure out a solution that made sense to me other than just make my lineups that I had and go with it.
Right. Yeah. So did you end up with Costa in All-Star Rare?
You can pull up my lineups if you want. You said we can share screen here.
Yeah. We
So
can do
let's. I did use him in U23. I had holes in pretty much every single line. We were actually joking about it. So like in Champion Europe, like I had a really good lineup, and I'm just plowing in Lewandowski, plowing in Krush, plowing in like Milinkovic, Savic, Super Rare, and then playing Melvin Bard because that was my options. So it was a situation. I think my U23 is really strong. My Rare Pro is really strong. My Champion Europe Rare Pro is relatively strong, minus the Melvin Bard situation. It's also really a bad matchup for Milinkovic Savic as well. They're playing Inter, so it's a really bad matchup. But the way I looked at it sort of was I considered actually playing Kruis and Lewandowski in All-Star Pro. But I did not have a good enough super rares really to like play them with. And I also had Terame and Octavio in an elite matchup that I did not have the ability to play them in Challenger. And I didn't want to waste them in rare, I guess, All-Star Rare. So I just decided I'm just going to play Bard and Milinkovic Savic. If they get like a 45 or 50 average together, I probably would expect them to do well. So yeah, like I think I broke up my Inter stack. I have an Inter stack, which I won Lewandowski with a couple weeks ago with my whole Inter stack, but I decided to break them off. The matchup's okay. They're actually a pretty big favorite. They were a bigger favorite than I expected against Lazio. But Diego Leite's elite. He's really good. They have a really good matchup, really strong matchup as well. Pedro Gonzalez obviously is pretty elite. It's a good situation for him as well. And then Lautaro was my best forward, which is why I broke up the Interstack. I wouldn't have broke it up except for I actually am pissed because I'm pretty confident Ryan Cherokee gets a start this week, but they play PSG, so I didn't really want to do that. And I would have played Jonathan David except for the Lille game got COVIDed. So I was looking, my options were just terrible, but I had some Champ Europe options, so I just decided to break off my inner stack for the week because the matchup wasn't elite anyways. So I decided to play Lautaro and Bastoni, who are obviously solid. My super rares are both really good, and then Diego Costa is the best U23 goalie of the week. Not that that matters much, but he has a really good chance of getting a clean sheet, obviously.
Have you ever actually used that Cherokee?
Yeah, no. I think this would have been the first. I was planning to use him. I was looking to use him because I'm pretty confident he starts, but PSG is obviously just a terrible option. But yeah, so I think my U23 Rare Pro is really good. My Champ Europe Rare Pro, if the super rares, which are not good, I agree. Obviously, Bard and Milinkovic Savic are not great. If they can get 45 to 50, and then Kruis and Lewandowski just blast hundreds, I'll probably get a decent reward. Was kind of my thought process there. So like I had like Jose Maria Jimenez, who does not have a great matchup either. And I considered playing him over Bard, but he just came back from an injury. So I thought there's a decent chance that he rotates on a short week. So that's why I went with this lineup instead, because I thought it was the best, most likely chance to get 5 starters. Although Bard could not play also. Like Bard, I've been trying to get a super rare defender to have in Champ Europe because I want to play as you can see now, I have Cruz and Lewandowski. So that basically means that if I'm not playing a super rare goalie, which I wouldn't be using one most likely, I have to have a defender super rare, and then I have Milinkovic-Savic and Kessie. So like kind of my plan with Champion Europe Rare Pro right now is to like run best goalie matchup, Cruz Lewandowski, either best of Milinkovic-Savic, Kessie, and then a defender. The problem is I just don't have a great defender. I have a bunch of okay guys, but none are great.
Yeah. John Nellis is rolling over in his grave right now with all this negative Bard talk. So if he's listening, John, I'm sorry.
I like Bard. I like Bard. Someone's offered me a decent amount. Like I think I had like a 1 or 1.5 ETH offer at some point for Bard, but I view him as a decent option. If he ends up on like a top end team, I think he could be pretty good long term. But right now, like I would much rather have someone that was good. Like obviously, like I'm not going to pay for like an Adair or someone like that that's like 8 ETH. But so like I have right now Gabriel from Arsenal, who's been pretty good on the year. I would like to just have a couple guys like that, so I can just like rotate matchups out of.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I wanted to bring up the U23 thing because although you went rare pro with not the rare, I was looking at some of the stats that we have for the lineups that have been entered already for U23 rare. I wonder if I can pull this up in the Gameweek Center. That would probably be the easiest. But basically, like the number of teams that like can realistically win rewards in U23 rare at least is like so much smaller than we think. So you can see like the game week just started and we're at 26% complete already for U23 rare. So there are 100 rewards available in U23 rare, and there are 300. So there's about 1,500. I'm sorry, there's 751 lineups, and basically half of them have a common.
Yeah.
And so we were seeing that there are 365 game or lineups that have 5 players with games. So like even people are submitting like guys without games. So I looked at, there are 100 lineups with 5 rares with guys who have games.
Only
for 100 prizes. 100 of 100.
I mean, and like some of those guys might not even play. Like they could easily have people in lineups that like aren't even eligible to play.
Right. It's like we're gonna like if everybody thought like the DNP possibilities were like high because of like COVID, it's even the number of lineups that we know of like right now that of players that like don't have games is so high. Like in Challenger Rare, there are 120 rewards and there are 150 lineups with 5 guys with games, all rare cards. It's just like, and that includes, I think Odysseus is the most popular goalie in Challenger, and he's out. So
exactly. Like, it's an interesting week. I really wish the prize pools weren't. I'm not even going to get into the prize pools, but it's just this week.
They're good this week.
It's really good week. If you have teams like, for example, like I could not enter a challenger lineup. I could not do it once I used U23, and I couldn't enter a U23 rare lineup because I'm going to prioritize rare pro over rare any day of the week because I only care realistically about like tier 0s and tier 1s. So I'm just not going to prioritize a division 4 rare lineup unless I just have it. But like, yeah, like it's just, I mean, it's such an incredible week to generate a reward if you are set up. If you get 5 guys and anyone has, like, I don't even think you need good weeks this week. Like if you put up like 300 points, like you're going to get a card. Like if you average like 50s, you're going to get cards. But I mean, normally like most weeks, like my thought process every time is just like, if my guys average 70 plus, I'm going to end up near a podium. Not near a podium, but like I'm going to end up in like a card that I actually would want to win instead of like a tier 3, which I just don't really care about because they're just not worth much. That said, like obviously like Champion Europe and U23, like I care more about tier 2s and tier 3s there obviously than I do about it in other options. But yeah, that's another thing. Pierre, I'm waiting for Scosmo to just eat COVID out of like Vertonghen or one of his guys from Benfica because it's going to be hilarious when it happens because it's definitely happening. He might still want a card to be fair. But Yeah, I just think that, like, for me, like, I care about tier zeros and tier ones in any region. Like, I mean, even tier one in Asia is probably 0.15, 0.2 ETH now. It wasn't a little bit ago, but like at this point, that's probably what it's worth. And then like U23 and champs, like I'll take any card there because like any card there's at least okay.
Yeah.
And U23 and champ. But yeah, it's a situation where like I mean I really only care right now about my rare pro lineups because those are the best shots to get the star cards. And then also like we've talked about before, if there's 13 this week in champ Europe or in global all-star, there is 13 or 12 stars. If you get first, second, or third, like you end up having to be in like the top third of the bracket, top quarter of the bracket. Top quarter of the bracket's like elite level cards, and if like you end up like one of 12, like if you're the top of 12 stars, you're gonna get a top 5, top 6 player that's worth like 2 to 3 ETH. So it's just worthwhile to me. And even like U23, like I said, like the bottom of U23 star pool is an ETH probably. Well, the top of it's like obviously the top of it's like 6 ETH because it's like Haaland and Mbappe, but like the top of it's realistically like still like Timber, those guys, like you're talking 2.5 ETH from a lot of those guys right now.
Yeah, for sure. For those watching the stream, I apologize. I have like an old computer trying to share a screen, so that's why it's lagging out a little bit. But yeah, do you think I don't know if I want to go down this road actually, but do you think the rewards are better now because we've just been off? Like there's been nothing. Like we literally haven't had an all-star for the last 3 weeks.
100%. The reason the rewards are good this week is because the cooldown, the way it works, from what I'm understood, and so like if you're watching this could not be fully accurate, and the prize pool and the way that it works is stupid and doesn't make sense. So the way that it works is they have a cooldown factor. Once a card is given, it can't be given in that region again for, let's say, 3 weeks, whether it's 3 weeks or 3 game weeks, whatever. So the problem is, and the reason the prize pools are always terrible is because they then, when they're calculating rewards, take the card out of the prize pool entirely. Despite it still being there and should be calculated, it just is removed. So you're not calculating it at all. So what happened over the last, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks, we've had like no fixtures because of the holidays. So there's been no contest. Well, if there's no contest, there's no rewards given. I'm pretty sure that if this was like a full-on week, like, so this week right now, right, we're talking about, I think this week has like 10% of teams playing in like Challenger, probably. Maybe 15%. If this was a full week, I think like Challenger Rare Pro would have like 70 cards in Rare Pro to give away. But the problem is like what we've been seeing is like 25 cards because the cooldown factor is so terrible and makes no sense. So I think that over the next couple weeks, we are going to see a bloated prize pools. And then we're going to go back to our terrible prize pools that don't make sense because they still haven't fixed the reward structure.
So we just have to take advantage right now.
Yeah. So like literally like this next 3 game weeks, or like, let's say like through the end of January. Cause like even like next midweek, there's only AFCON and then there's like West Ham plays. That's it. I actually have an elite lineup, but I don't know if I'll be able to play it because I don't know if you can play. I don't know if Global's going to be open. I don't know what they're going to have open next week because I don't know if there's a licensed team. I think it might just be AFCON because like West Ham plays, but like they're not licensed anymore. But I have a really good lineup if I can play D3 next week. But so like I think the rest of this month is going to be really strong rewards. Then we'll be back to our normal like terrible reward structure again. Going forward.
All right. I didn't, yeah. All right. But yeah, just like looking at, this is the, for those of you who are not aware of this page, it's called the Impact Players on the Gameweek Center. And it pretty much just gives you like how many cards of each player is in this competition. So like Rafa's the first one. So there are 31 rare cards being played in Challenger Europe Rare. And the power is basically the percentage of the total power. So like Rafa's a little higher because he's also the most popular captain in this region. And then there's some commons that push it up. But like if you just look, like we said, like Odysseus is the most popular goalie in the entire competition. He's supposed to be out. And so there are places, you know, you can, if you don't normally have a lot of success in Challenger because you're thinking like, oh, I have to go up against like Ajax and PSV and all the super teams, Bruges and Genk, and like they're not here this week, but like the prizes are almost set up like they are. So it's a nice week. Oh yeah,
I
Pitt's
mean, you
here too.
and I both think that 4 cards probably wins reward. If you have a decent 4 cards, you're going to win a card in Challenger 4 this or Challenger Rare this week.
I mean, it could happen in Rare Pro too. Like any challenger is really
Like I think if you have 4 cards, you have a decent shout at getting reward. Like obviously, if you have 4 cards, you need better averages. But like I think if you hit like 300 points, like if you average like 70 a piece, I think you have a decent shot at getting up there for a reward this week. Which is, I mean, maddening because like in the recent times, like you put up like 380, you're not getting a reward,
right.
Or you're getting
exactly
a terrible reward. Like if you have a good week, I think you're gonna. The thing is someone's gonna have a really good game, whether it be Benfica, whether it be. But it's a great week. If you have a Portugal stack, like a Portugal stack of like one of the teams in Portugal, someone's gonna just win like a Tadic with that, which is awesome. Like it pays for your whole team. So I mean, that's what you dream for. Like that's what like my inner stack that I did over the summer. Like you and I remember we had a bunch of conversations about it on the Sorare Andrews podcast, and I did the inner stack, and I won Lewandowski. I think when I bought the inner stack, well, I obviously had pieces of it, but when I bought the inner stack, the pieces would have cost me about 2.5 when I created it. Granted, I had like 3 of the 5 pieces already, but probably was like 2.5 ETH that it cost me. I won Lewandowski that's worth like 3.3 or whatever he's worth now. So like whole stacks paid off. It's done, ready to go. And honestly, now that stack probably would cost me four and a half.
A lot more.
Yeah, 4.5.
Yeah. It's funny. Josh in chat just keeps pointing out more guys who are out on this list.
You just got give me one of the guys that Cosmo play, and then I can have the lulls.
I mean, even Marcusine is there, and like he's not.
I mean, if you look at that list, like how many people on that list? Let's look at this list. This list is what, 30 players. If I look quick rundown, 1, 2, 3, 5 or 6 guys on this list are for sure not playing.
Are for sure out. Yeah,
for sure out. And that's like with me doing no effort. Like for example, I don't know if I feel like Tecasito's not been playing, but maybe I'm wrong on that. I don't have him, so I don't really know.
He might play with Jao Mario out.
Yeah, so all right, so he might play. But like, so for example, like, I'm not even counting guys that like maybe won't play because I'm not even familiar. Like we know Pedro Porro's out. Like we know Odysseus is out. We know that there's a few other people that are just not going to play in this list. And this is like the top end of the list, not even the bottom. Like Altai Bayender's out. He's not going to play. Ivo Rodriguez was out. I don't think he's going to play.
Yeah, it's a wild list.
Yeah, that makes sense, Mike. Jao Mario's out, so Tecasito getting some game at right back or right wing back makes sense.
Right. We both have Jao Mario, so we knew that he was.
Yeah, we actually talked about it last night. So that makes sense.
Quick question from Squad G6. He said, "What's this list about?" This is the if you go to the impact players on the Gameweek Center. So if you just go to the SO5 drop down and hit Gameweek Center, and then the impact players, it shows you all the players in that competition, how many cards they that are entered, and you can do this for any competition. Before I go to a different topic, Sorare Data has a survey that we're trying to have a bunch of people take, and it's in the episode description here on YouTube. If you guys wouldn't mind just taking a minute or two, it's actually a very quick survey, just all about how you use Sorare Data. And so if you guys could take those 2 minutes to complete it, it would be much appreciated. Sean, I want to go back to your lineups here. I want to avoid mine. But we were talking last night about your special weekly lineup. I don't have a special weekly lineup because I only had 2 players, I think, that were in and didn't feel like buying a third or a third and a fourth, I guess. How did you come upon this lineup?
So as you know, I went down and listed to you everyone that I had that was of these nations, and then looked through the previous international fixtures to see if they were playing in the World Cup qualifiers, and that's how I came up with the list. So Negadu and Gadjui should play. Diawara should play. They actually have a really good matchup too, even though they're a terrible team. Montero should start, and Toko Ekambi should start. But he's been I don't really know what's going on with him. So he's been weird lately. He got a little banged up, then missed some time, then was coming in off the bench. It's weird what's happened with Toko Ekambi. But like all four of those guys should play, and then Pau Lopez, pending the Marseille game actually playing. But yeah, like if you look at the game week, there is obviously a team. Senegal is going to be pretty popular because people are going to play like Mane and those type of guys, and they're the biggest favorite.
Yeah, they're good.
Play. But like I think all of my guys are decent favorites as well. Like I think every single one of the four that I played are decent favorites, and I don't really know how Pau Lopez is. And to be fair, I would not have prioritized it. However, with them giving top 100 a limited, that's a pretty good chance at hitting one of the limiteds because there shouldn't be that many good lineups in there. Like I have like 400 cards and I was severely limited. I had like 8 guys that should or could play. So like I imagine most people are really suffering, and having 4 is difficult, much less you have to basically have 4 positional players because goalies is like Kofi was the only goalie that was eligible. I don't even know if he starts, but I think or Nurendine. I don't know.
Yeah.
What the goalie options were because I didn't have any. I have a Koye, but they don't play till Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah, I see 697 lineups in it. I didn't do any of the analysis of how many are legitimately playing, although even just entering lineups is a little more.
That's true, Black. Yeah, they do. The limiteds being allowed does really open it up a bit. I just don't have any limiteds, but I have like 4 limiteds. So you're right. That does open it up to a lot more people to be eligible to be in there.
Did you think you were going to play any of these cards elsewhere?
I would have considered it. I'm not sure. You'd have to look up through the rest of my teams. I'll tell you if I would. Like I did play a Toko Ekambi rare in All-Star rare. So obviously can't challenger would have only been able to be in All-Star. So if I look at my All-Star, so Terame and Octavio are a really good matchup, so I would have played them for sure. So that takes out Rare Pro. Obviously, the Super Rares, like I would have considered maybe playing a Toko Ekambi Super Rare instead of Mensa, because I'm not positive Mensa starts. And then Sule, I could have not played Sule, so I could have considered like Negadu and Gajui, or like I have a Koulibaly I did consider, but I'm not positive what his health is. So I just decided. Yeah. And Sule's health is in question too, but I know Bayern has just like everybody has COVID right now. So if he's healthy, he'll play, and the matchup's really favorable. So I decided to just play him. I also we've talked about, like I don't care about All-Star Rare. Like that said, like my lineup's good. Like Sarabia is good, Gonzalez is good. So I have some good options. It's just I don't care as much about it. I would have. The way I try to look at lineups is like you want everyone to average like 60 points, let's say, and then you want like someone to be able to get in there and get 100. Because if someone gets 100, just bolsters everyone else up there. So I try to look at my lineups. So like even my rare lineups are generally pretty good in All-Star Rare. It's just I don't care as much about them. I'll care about them if 3 people like go off. Like let's say I have 3 people play tomorrow and they average like 70, then I'll care about that lineup because I know it has a legit shot at getting a decent reward.
Yeah, I'd like to sign up for the Otavio 100.
I captained him over Terame. I know you always screw up your captaining. Is Luis Diaz going to play, or is he not going to play because they're trying to get like $1 billion for him from Liverpool?
He is healthy enough to play. I can put it that way.
That's lots of confidence in that from you.
I mean, we were talking about it yesterday that like it makes no sense for Liverpool to spend that much money in January for Luis Diaz. Like people are like they need him cover for during AFCON. And it's like, you don't spend that much money and get a player like that for cover for AFCON. And like, I just don't like, he won't start for them. Right. Like he doesn't start over Mane or Salah.
Who?
Luis Diaz.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see how he makes any sense to me. Like we talked about last night. Like, I don't see why Liverpool would pay for him. I just don't see that. I mean, I do think Mane is going to be gone sooner rather than later, but like you have Diego Jota in that spot. To me, they need like a replacement for Firmino. That's more important, which I mean, they might think it's Jota, but Jota's way too selfish. I think he fills more in the Mane role out left than
I agree
in the center, but like they realistically would be better suited to have a replacement for Bobby come in than Luis Diaz. Like, I don't know. I just don't really see it from, I'm not saying he's not good because like he's fine. But like, is he worth like $1 billion and to like be a bench warmer? Probably not. Just my opinion on him. Like, I don't know. Yeah, that's what like, I don't think he starts over Jota, Josh. And like you have that's essentially the role that he would be coming in for. So like, he makes no sense to me going to Liverpool.
Yeah, that's definitely a weird one. Oh no, Georgie bought a Turkish goalie for a quarter of an
How old is the Turkish goalie that you bought? Because I'm guessing he's like 36. Because I looked at them and they were old.
Not a lot of young ones, which is funny because Bayender was like there before they exploded the whole. They got the whole league.
Yeah,
he was a U23 at least when he was fit, and then all of a sudden, they bring the whole league, and I'm like, oh, more goalies, and I'm like 37, 38, 36, and I'm like, whoa,
it's really old. Like their goalies that we're playing this week are like average age was like 35.
Yeah, I feel like they make the Japanese goalies blush because they're so old. I don't know. Do we see anyone on this Champion Europe list that's out?
I mean,
I'll say this though about when I was looking to do a Champion Europe team is I don't even want to say it's the sharpness of the people who play Champion Europe, but there are more lineups like with 5 players and like fewer DNPs and all of that in Champion Europe than any other region. Like it's just, I don't know if it's because there's more information because they're the more popular leagues or like what it is, but just like truly like the number of lineups. Like this week maybe is like the outlier, but I was just looking at like the number of lineups that had 5 players with games. And like in All-Star, Rare and Rare Pro, it's like around 55%. Challengers around 50%. U23 is the same. And it's 80 in Champion Europe. And you're just like, everybody plays and everybody's got. And
I just think that the team, there's more news and the teams are just very basic and they just start like the guys that people have, they just play. Like if you have, I mean, obviously he's been out, but like if you have Kimmich, you play Kimmich. That's what you do. If you have Cruz, you play Cruz. Like it's just what you do. So I think that's a lot of it. The teams don't tend to rotate as much because they rotate in like cup games and stuff like that. And like the top end guys, which are the guys that people are playing. Part of it too is like, I think, I hope people have realized that like if you are running out, like obviously this is a short week, so like this doesn't matter. Oh, Parejo has COVID, he's on the list. But like if you're running out on a week to week basis, Patrick Schick, you're generally not competing. You're not competing well unless he goes out there and bags 4. Like then you're up there competing. But like Champ Europe, you really need to average like 75 plus in Champ Europe, or you're just not going to compete because you have guys like Lundau, like Cruz. Cruz has a bad game, he puts up 85. Like, okay, good luck competing with that when you plop out someone else. Squad, no, players that are in AFCON will not get scores in Challenger Europe. But yeah, like I mean, you and I've talked about. That's why you didn't tell me you were going with Champ Europe. If your gallery isn't good in every other region, Champ Europe and playing Champ Europe does not make sense. There's just way better ROI situations on the platform than playing Champ Europe. Although I will say, and this has changed because we haven't done a pod for a while because it took you a while to meet my demands. Did you tell HG my demands yet? He probably won't like my one demand.
Was it beyond the lifetime subscription?
Yes, well beyond that.
Oh,
the other part that he has not does not happen when I message him about.
No, I did not tell him.
Yeah, HG. Just so you know, Laird agreed to this. That's part of the contract. But I think Champ Europe is better to play right now in terms of like a D4, D3 team than probably U23 because the elite level U23 guys are priced like elite level Champ Europe guys. Like if you look at like Gakpo and you look at like Sangare, Kaku, Malacia, like those guys are not priced any cheaper than guys that are in Champ Europe. So like in the past, you could make your let's say you want to make a U23 rare pro team and you put in let's say 5 ETH. And then to make a good rare pro like Champ Europe team, it might have cost you let's say 10 ETH. The gap's closed. The gap's pretty much like you look like, for example, Oblak is the same cost as like Van de Voort.
Yep.
If I look at like defenders, like Malaysia is the same price as like Alaba. Alaba's probably cheaper, to be honest.
He's absolutely cheaper.
Yeah, not saying Alba's an elite scorer because he's probably not, but the point stands. Like if I want to go and buy like I can buy Neymar right now for like probably I don't know 2.5. Why would I? I'm not going to buy like Gakpo or Sinistera for like 1.8 if I can buy like Neymar for like 2.5 realistically. No, I'm saying like obviously if your gallery's big and you're trying to play every region, like which a lot of people are trying to do, like I play every region. So like I've got people that I would not recommend to Laird, for example. Like I bought a Donnarumma recently just because I think long term having him for me makes a lot of sense. But if Laird had him, I would tell him he's a moron and he should sell him immediately. So it's a situation where I think right now there's a better opportunity to buy Champ than there is U23. I do think the best value play right now is Challenger. I think that Challenger is the best value buy because all of the best U23 cards you win with Challenger cards. The best two bang for bucks right now, in my opinion, are Challenger and Asia. Those are the two best bang for your bucks because I think Challenger, like I know Ito, you could get Ito for like 0.4, 0.45. Ito scores like 60 average. For you to get someone like that in like U23 or in champs, it's gonna cost you like 1.5, 2 ETH. And it's not like he's old, like he's like 28. But I think like your best bang for your buck is Challenger and then Asia. Like realistically speaking, when Asia is running, your all-star region should be littered with Asian players because they score really well and they're significantly cheaper. Like obviously Cecina is really expensive, but like even Cecina, like you look at Cecina, like he's probably like 0.6, 0.7 right now. Let me pull up his price real quick. So if I look at Cecina, he scores about as good as anyone, if not better, and he's 0.9. So like he's gone up. But like if I look back to let's say 3 weeks ago, Cecina was 0.5. So like in terms of like in the summer months and like once March hits, once February hits, like if you're playing like Lewandowski in all-star lineups, it makes no sense when you could just play Senior, who's just as good for a fraction of the price. So I think that Challenger and Asia right now are the best bang for your bucks. America's kind of bloated right now a bit, and I haven't looked fully down the Asian ranks. Like obviously Cecinia's 0.9, and I know Kikuchi's a bit high, but like I don't think Thiago Martins is that expensive right now. I could be wrong. And there's other players in Asia that are reasonably priced that score really well that I think you should consider looking at.
I think that's pretty much always going to be the case. Like Asia's always going to be cheaper.
Asia and America, like in terms of like, so there's players. So like I look at players as if you are in Champ Europe and U23, you generally shouldn't be considered to be playing that card in All-Star. Like the way I look at it and the way I break things down is like your All-Star team should generally speaking be Asia and America and then Challenger Europe when there's no Asia and America going. Like that should generally be your the way your All-Star is constructed. Like so for example, like I have Carlos Gil and I have Carlos Gil Super Rare. Generally speaking, when things are going normally and we're in the summer months or like we're in March, I'm not going to play Carlos Gil in America that frequently because Carlos Gil's too valuable to play in America that free.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe at the beginning of the season, it's not that way because at the beginning of the season, obviously cards are worth more. And like, so like if I go in America, like, yeah. So for example, like let's say America started today and I played Carlos Gil. Well, if I win Carlos Gil, it's like a 1+ ETH card. That's fine. But like let's say later in the season, like Carlos Gil's worth like, you won Carlos Gil. When you won Carlos Gil, do you remember how much he cost?
I think it was like half an ETH.
Okay. So yeah, you're talking like, and I remember you won like Vela, and Vela was like 0.4 or something when you won. So like the price has changed. And something that's interesting to me, especially, so you've been on now for a little over a year, like a year and like 4 months, give or take.
Not even that long, yeah.
Okay. And I've been on for now almost a year. I'm just under a year now that I've been on the platform. But this is my first cycle, full cycle. Like I saw what happened in America last year, but I had never seen what happened in Challenger till the summer this year. And then now, so like next year, I'm going to see what happens going to Challenger. But like, if you look back at Carlos Gil, like if you click on his price graph's probably pretty absurd. Despite nothing's changed. Look at it. Look at this price graph with Gil. Like nothing's changed. Nothing has changed on Gil from May until today. And like even like in September, like he was just coming back from his injury, nothing's changed and his price has tripled. And so this is like I think there is a situation in America, and I'm interested to see it in Asia. I think Asia is very similar, and it could be all of the regions. So like what you see is that like last year in September, there was, let's say, 10,000 people on the platform. I know this isn't the number. I'm just using this.
Yeah.
And now this year, starting the season in MLS, there's 50,000 people on the platform. So next year, when the cards come out for America, those people are going to be able to bid and get those cards. But then by the time the next season starts, there's going to be a massive amount of people on the platform again. And what I'm seeing is like actually the beginning of the season isn't the time to sell the cards. It's realistically like the 1 to 2 months before the season. And I actually think the best time to buy the cards now, looking at this cycle, is in like August. I think that like you can still get a couple months of value out of a player. You buy them in August, and then if you want, you sell them come, let's say, a month and a half before the start of the next season. That's like the play, because right now we're a month and a half out, and Carlos Gil costs 1.2. I could have bought Carlos Gil for 0.5 ETH in August and got 2 months of usage out of Carlos Gil. So it's a situation where I think the best play is to really buy a player near the end of the season. And then I also think that there is a situation where you have to just ride players into the ground. Like the end of the season, you can't sell players because they're just not worth anything. So you have to realistically wait till after the season or the upcoming season to sell. Like I will say that if I think one of the big things for me too is what I'm going to do this year is if Jimmy Maurer is worth 1.2 ETH again, I will be selling Jimmy Maurer. So if anyone wants him at 1.2 ETH, you come to me. I will happily relinquish my like go to Maurer's price.
I was gonna say I have a Jimmy Maurer too, and I'll sell for 1.1.
Okay, there you go. And
I might undercut you live on the podcast.
But I think what I'm thinking going into things is I always recommend having a lot of goalies, because the more goalies you have, the more midweeks you can play, the more like the more goalies you have, the more utility. Like look at these the 0.8 and whatnot the Maurer was. But like you even see him, like he's creeping up. Obviously he's not a 0.8, but there's a really good chance by the start of the season Maurer's like 0.4, 0.5. And Andre Blake's probably really expensive. And I know that Takawaka from Yokohama F. Marinos is really expensive right now. Yeah, like Andre Blake's 0.5. So like let's say I want Andre Blake. He's 0.5. I look back at Andre Blake's price graph for like the last year. Well, all of a sudden, Andre Blake's price graph hey, look at that. It's climbing. So like by the start of the season, Andre Blake could be like 0.9 or 1 ETH. So I think there's a lot of people that you want to sell. And I think you want to sell your surplus in that range. Like right in this area that we're at right now, I think that's when you want to sell your surplus. So I think that you need to look at your teams and see where you have surpluses of, and then try to find some guys that maybe you can sell and you could liquidate if you need ETH to generate. But I don't necessarily think you should buy stuff right away. You might want to wait a little bit longer. Or the real way you should go about things, I think, is you should have like a cycle. And so like right now, I think you should be buying Challenger Europe players, for example. Like I think it's probably a good time to buy Challenger Europe players. Because if you look at them, everyone's up right now, realistically, because obviously ETH is down, and then some of these guys are up. But if I look at, so like I pull up Ito, who I talked about a little bit ago. Ito's really solid, but let's look at Ito's price graph. Oh, Ito's price graph like hasn't moved and isn't on that type of trajectory. That like look at this price graph of Ito.
Yeah,
stagnant, hasn't moved. You look back, you're at the beginning of the year, Ito's price graph hasn't moved. You're back to like
that's a whole year.
Yeah. So like we're talking. So like if you look back at this price graph, right, the time at which I'm recommending buying Ito is the February 1 area where he's 0.15 to 0.2. Well, like let's say next year we're looking at we have the same conversation a year from today, and Ito's like 1.3, and this price graph's the same. So like all of a sudden, like you see, like the season started in August. And we're now in December. And I know Gank hasn't been good, but Ito's been fine. Like Ito's L15 is 60. Like, it's not like he's been bad. He plays every game. His L15 is 60. He has multiple 100-point games. Like he's fine. So when you look at things, yes, squad, they're expensive, but then next year when they're when they're 3x the price, then they're more expensive. So the idea is to buy, like right now, America is spiked. If you haven't bought America already, you're going to buy America on a spike. You want to be like ahead of the game. So like right now, in my opinion, you should be selling America, buying Challenger, and or you should be selling America, probably getting ready to sell Asia, and then selling and then buying Challenger and Champ Europe. And then going into next year, I think you're going to be wanting to let's say we get to May and June. I think you want to be buying America and Asia, selling Challenger and Champ. Yeah, I'm not saying Ito's going to drop. I'm saying Ito's going to go higher is what I'm saying. So like I'm saying it's a good time to buy Ito before he goes on a spike. So it's a situation that's similar like U23s. I think that a good time to sell a U23 from a age perspective is like December of the year when he turns 23 that year. Like if I didn't have a Malaysia Super Rare and just plow them into Rare Pro or U23 Rare Pro frequently, I would sell my Bees low right now because I would just buy him back in 6 months when he probably goes down a little bit because he's not U23 anymore.
That's exactly what I did. I sold
Yeah.
Bigelow and bought Vandevort.
Which I think is a good deal. Like if I take everything out, like obviously everyone's team's built differently. Like if I remove factors like in a vacuum, I'd much rather have Vandevort. Like I'd rather, if you gave me one card and told me I could not sell it ever, I'd rather have Vandevort over Bigelow. But obviously prices matters, rosters matter, stuff like that. Like so for me right now, like getting rid of Bigelow does not make sense just because the yield that Bigelow and Malaysia stacking in D2 for me is very important because I can then run like those two. I have like Noah Lang, Carlson Rare, a lot of elite super rares, and a lot of elite rare midfielders, and a lot of elite rare defenders. So basically, like I just run like I have 3, I think U23D goalie stacks with the defender being a super rare. So it gives me like the option to play matchups of a goalie and a defender with one being a super rare, 2 elite rare forward and mids, and then an elite super rare to go with that.
I think the only thing I want to push back on is the whole like we've been here for a year, so we've seen like a full cycle. But like winter time last year was like pre-boom, and like the MLS prices were so low before they totally spiked. As the season went on, or as we got closer to the season. And I actually thought that, like, I'm thinking back of the deals I didn't make in like April and May for Challenger guys. Like I have brought this up a few times, but like I had like this watch list basically set up, and I remember I thought Luis Sinistera at 0.125 was too expensive. I didn't want to pay 0.15 for CDK. And it's like, as soon as it became August, it was like, oh, these guys are 0.5. Now they're like almost an ETH. And I don't know, but it's clear to me that the dips are before the season's end and not after. Like, I think there are enough people who are willing to get out before season's end thinking like, oh, I don't want to wait till the off season, so I'm just going to sell now. That's when the dip is, and not truly in the off season.
Yeah, it's something to learn. Like I would have thought the dip would be in the off season, but the dip is really at the end of the season, and then the off season things start to spike again.
Yeah, right. Like Black was correct about the MLS dip. He was just completely wrong about the time. And so I'm not going to take any credit for agreeing with him or any slack for agreeing with him on the timing. But yeah, I think the only thing I want to add, though, with the MLS thing, and it probably applies more in Asia, is I think there's still like a very significant knowledge edge when it comes to those leagues. And if you are really knowledgeable about Major League Soccer or the K League or the J League, there are like really good bargains out there because maybe guys are coming back from injury, or somebody left their team and now they're going to start, or they're, as simply as their L5 is below 50. Like there are definitely still like really good cards out there that are not that expensive, but it's one of those things that we talk about all the time. Like, do you have the money or do you have the time? But if you have the time for research, like I think you can find some steals when it comes to the leagues that haven't started yet.
Yeah, I agree. So here's a question. In terms, like, I have this too, and every time this is the question: have you ever like not regretted when you were really wanted a player, and then you just waited for them to go down? Have you ever not regretted that? Because I've never not regretted that at all.
That's a great question. No, like I don't think there's ever been a card where I'm like, I want to buy it and it goes down. It's as simple as that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think they've ever gone down.
I know Pires was in here earlier, and I'll give him a lot of credit. So, like, for me, mentally, it's very difficult to be like, let's say I wanted Van de Voort today, right? Like, and
I know
Van de
where you're
Voort,
going
let's
with
say
this.
1.1, right? And I'm like, I mean, I really want Van de Voort, but he was selling at like 0.9 like 2 weeks ago. I'm just going to wait till he goes back to 0.9. I'm going to wait. And then all of a sudden he's at like 1.8, and then it's like, and then you buy Van de Voort because like you really needed him.
Because you
Like,
still need them, yeah.
I will give a good example of this player. So like I really wanted, and the time has come and passed on this, Trent Alexander-Arnold. I really wanted Trent Alexander-Arnold because he's really young. I think that if they tweak the matrix, he's the best player on the platform. And I think he already scores good despite a matrix that is heavily unfavorable to him. I wanted Trent Alexander-Arnold around June, right? So as you see, he was 1 ETH. But I was just like, I'm just going to wait a little bit, and then I'll buy a Trent Alexander-Arnold at a different time, and then I'll be happy. Well, nowadays, the Trent Alexander-Arnold is going to cost me 3 ETH.
Yeah.
And like, I maybe should still buy him at 3 ETH. So it's like, I will give Pires credit. So Pires will buy the player. If there's a player he wants, he will overpay for that player. Whereas, like, and look, both strategies work and both can work in your favor. Like, I have bought cards where I waited for them to come down and then bought them. Like, I waited for Memphis Depay to get to around 0.8 ETH, and I waited for like Tony Cruz to get to like 1 ETH. So like there are people that like I waited for and it worked out for me, and I saved money on, right? But like Pires, like we talked about earlier today, like you go look at Diego Costa, and Pires spent 2.3 ETH on Diego Costa. Nobody has spent over 1.6 on his rare, period, because that just no one's done it until Pires went and got the guy, because he just goes and gets the guys he wants. Like if he sees a guy, and even if the guy's like 1 point, because he'll ask me, like he's asked me before, like, hey, what do you think on this guy? And I'm like, the guy, Pires will be like, I think I can buy it for 1.25. I'm like, the guy's worth like 1.1. And then like 20 minutes later, Pires is like, all right, I bought it for 1.25. And that's just, like, he just buys it. And then like a week later, the guy's like, all right, the card's worth like 2 ETH. So like he goes and just like, if he sees a card that he wants to add, he goes and buys it and doesn't have that regret. Every time I sit there, I'm like, I really want this guy. I'm a hem and haw. Like I told Pires this actually too. I wanted to scoop Van de Voort floor at 0.8, 0.9. I wanted to scoop the floor. There was like 5 of them under an ETH. I wanted to just buy all 5, but I needed a little bit. I needed like a day to like generate the ETH to buy it.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to, as soon as you buy one, people will raise the price and therefore like it's going to remove it. So I want to be able to buy them all at one point. And I think my average cost was going to be like 0.85 to 0.9 ETH, somewhere in there. But anyways, it took me like a day or day and a half to generate like 5 ETH to be able to do it. And by the time I did it, it was gone. It was like 1.2. Yeah. So there's times to do stuff like that. But yeah, like if you want a card and something you and I talked about it before, like if there's a card you want and you really think you need the card, if you were going to pay, let's say 1 ETH, but you can only get it for 1.1 ETH, you are not going to regret paying an extra 0.1 ETH in the long term to go buy the card than you will missing out on the card. And the card then costs you 2.5. So it's something for me though, mentally, to like, it's a block, because I hate overpaying for stuff. I don't want to overpay for a card. I've tried to be better at it. I've tried to improve on it to some extent while still like holding to that, but it's something definitely can be a pro or con.
Yeah. As we're giving Pires credit for stuff, I'll give him credit also for selling that Vinicius Souza super rare that he bought for 0.65 and selling it for 4.3.
Well,
that makes it a little easier.
I'm gonna take an assist on that. Pires owes me a nice dinner on that one, because he had it listed at 3.5. Actually, the day before he had it listed at 3. I think I'm like, you need to like raise that price. And then he had it listed at 3.5, and the auction was like at 2.8 and was like 8 hours away. And I messaged him, and I'm like, you really need to up the price on that, because all you're doing by setting, I say this all the time, like all you're doing by setting a number like that is just sort of cucking yourself. Like you're making sure that you cannot get more, because like, let's say the auction goes for 3.7, you're going to limit the auction at 3.7 because your price is limiting it.
Right.
So I told him, like, you need to raise it, because worst thing that happens is like the auction goes for 3.3 and you lower your price to 3.3 after the auction. But if you sit there and list at 3.5, you cut the auction, you cut your price. So anyways, he listed at 4.3 and within an hour sold it at 4.3. So he owes me, I told him he owes me a nice steak dinner if we ever get together anywhere for that stuff. But I mean, that's something to do though. Like I've noticed Perez will, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. Like this situation, it would have been really bad. He will list a card to move it and will list a very low price to get it moved. But sometimes you want to list the price a little bit higher so someone then can come in and offer you a lower price that you are still willing to accept. If you put a price on the market at like, this is the number that I want, you're very unlikely to have someone just buy it off the market. Most of the time, someone's going to come in and offer you 80% of it.
Unless you're Gerard Piqué.
And unless you're Gerard Piqué, which, hey, to be fair, there are Gerard Piqués on the website that can go and do that stuff. And they're not going to care about 0.8 ETH. Like Gerard Piqué, how much did he lower his salary to like let them get into Pi and those guys? Like millions of dollars. He doesn't care about $1,000, but like I care about $1,000. You
Sure.
care about $1,000.
Yeah. Going back to the spike thing, Pat brought up that there were other things happening in the NFT markets in February and March last year that helped spike the cards, but I think
Gary V came in and pumped his bag and then went back to pump another bag and then another bag and then another bag, then another bag. But yeah, no, I think this is a lot. I mean, to be fair, so like when the spike happened and like you and I've talked about Top Shots, like I'm not interested in Top Shots. I do have a few. I have no idea what they're worth. I haven't been on the site in a year probably. But there was definitely a bump that was not organic, but most of the Sorare stuff seemed organic to me. And like this current run of stuff is very organic to me. Like the whales that are coming in seem organic to me to some extent, like which are huge. Lots of people are coming in, which is organic. And I mean, I do think the limited scarcity helped, because I do think that like people at lower budgets, like I know a lot of people, you bought limiteds, Black bought limiteds. I know a lot of other people who came in and just bought limiteds and didn't buy other stuff. I haven't. I don't see the value in it to me personally, but I think it really helped people to come in with a budget of like, let's say $500. Well, $500 budget on rares doesn't do you anything, but on limiteds, it could get you a team.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the biggest differences, and not to go on a totally different topic from our Gameweek 234 strategy review, but the whales that are coming in seem to be coming in for SO5, and that's very different than every other NFT, aping into any other NFT project. That like, if you're going to spend that much money to buy players who have good L5s so that you can play them in competitions, you're obviously like putting in time to figure out which players to buy, even if the thought process is that guy has a dark green circle, I'm going to buy him. I guess it's a square now. I'm going to buy him. Like that's still more effort than just like buying something and hoping to flip it in a week. So it's a little different, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's definitely pretty accurate.
Yeah.
It's the market's very weird. The offer market's very strong, like Black said. The offer market's very strong. ETH being dumped a bit really helps. And it's a situation where there's just you're gonna have to go get the cards. I think a lot of cards are going up. It was just talked about, like Squad mentioned, and I think this is what's always going to be the case, right? We're approaching numbers on Sorare where the demand exceeds what the supply is. What happens in that situation is they're going to create new scarcities. So like limited came in because the demand was too high for the supply of rares, and then they came to limited. This is not to say rares are still not going to be bought. Like there are going to be rares that are bought, but like rare prices are going to be incredibly expensive.
Yep.
And the people that are playing the rare division are people that are investing a significant amount of money or that have been here for a long time. And then what they will do, like, for example, there will eventually, hopefully, be a time where limited scarcity is outnumbered by the amount of people on the platform. And that day, there will be another scarcity, most likely of 10,000 instead of 1,000. And then limiteds will see that thing happen. But yeah, if there's 1 million people on the platform and there's 100 rares of card, there's not enough scarcity for that card to go around. So it's 100%. We're at a point. I do think we're at a point pretty much now where like rares are going to be difficult to get. Super rares are incredibly difficult to get. Like we're seeing that. Like to get an elite level super rare right now, like not an elite, but let's say a very good super rare right now, any region is really freaking difficult.
Yeah.
Because there are so few of them to get. Like I'm not even talking like if you want to get like a Cruz or a Kimmich, like you are paying 15 to 20 ETH for that card. But if you even want to get like I have a Frank Kessie, I paid like 2 ETH for it. But like I think at some point, like if Kessie, let's say Kessie averages like 58 a game and consistently does that, you're not going to be able to buy a Kessie super rare for like under 6 or 7 ETH, and that Cruz is going to be like 30 ETH type.
Right. Yeah, that's yeah, I think that's where we're heading, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're definitely heading that path.
Yeah. All right, we've gone a little longer than I thought we might, but I think we covered everything and beyond, at least for Game Week 234 and some of the other thoughts that we had. So thank you to everyone who has watched. If you are catching this on YouTube, if you could please just like the video, that'd be much appreciated. If you could also complete that survey that is linked in the description, that would help us quite a bit in a lot of things that we are planning on doing. So hit that up. If you are listening to the audio version of this podcast, if you could please rate and review it wherever you listen, trying to get the audio version, the audio podcast really up and running. So any sort of ratings and reviews are much appreciated. If you have any follow-up questions, you can find me on Twitter at Andrew M. Laird. Sean is at PSU Fans 2. So you can find him there. We're also available in the Sorare Discord. So check that out. We'll be back next week to preview Game Week 236. We're going to avoid doing these for the midweeks as of now, but come on back next Friday and we'll be here. Sean, I'll talk to you then.
Sounds good. Have a good one. See you next Friday.